Want help to grow your business? Download Bryn, the world's first business advisor in your pocket. To find out more, visit bryn.ai or search the App Store today.
Hi, welcome back to How Leaders Behave. In today's episode, we're having a look at the work of a leader. And we're going to try and break down a little bit of what does a leader need to do in an organisation where they're managing many people. Welcome again to my colleague and good friend, Mark Hall.
Hello, Peter. How you doing?
Yeah, great, thanks. Really another exciting episode to sort of try and unpack and take apart the anatomy of what a leader does. And in this episode, it really is about leading an organisation in some ways, isn't it?
Yeah, this is one on many. So management often is about one-on-one, is about having a resource that says, this is what I need you to do. But leadership is about leading an organization, whether it's the whole company, whether it's your small team, whether it's a whole division. It's one on many.
Yeah, so in this episode, in this series, we've had a look at a number of behavioural models around leadership in how leaders behave. We've had a look at the DISC profile, we've had a look at the 8 dimensions of leadership and the 363 of leaders. Yep. This one is using Wiley's Work of Leaders product, isn't it? So it's sort of trying to decipher where does a leader need to work in at different stages of managing an organisation or running a large team.
It was interesting when Wiley did the research, they wanted one profile. They wanted one psychometric that looked at all aspects of leadership. And what they realized is that they couldn't do that. And that's why they came up with 363 for leaders, and they came up with this product. Yeah. Because one-on-one is very different to one-on-many, and that's what this product is speaking to really well.
Definitely. So in essence, this is about if you're leading an organisation and you've got a vast number of people who are within the organisation, and it could even be a team, I suppose, of a department or something like that. Yep. But in this one, we're sort of going to unpack, well, you really need to know the direction you're heading as a leader and so forth, how you get people aligned to that, and then how you actually drive and execute your strategy.
I think you might have given some clues to where's our next question there, Peter.
I think we may have. Let's have a look.
Yes, absolutely. So I guess the question would be, what are the 3 elements of leadership that you would define as most important? And if this was together and we were working as a group of people on this, we'd get lots of different bits of sticky paper on the wall with lots of different answers. Yeah. But Wiley, who owned this IP, after 4 years of research, brought it all the way down to just 3 things.
Yeah, definitely.
And why don't you describe what they are, Peter?
Yeah, so 3 steps they've sort of come up with within this particular model. So the very first one is that blue section there about crafting a vision. And it talks about vision there, and I know how we've spent a lot of time in the series about being a visionary leader and knowing where the organisation's going. But this one in Work of Leaders is about whether it's a project, whether it's your organisation, whether it's a change management initiative, you really need to know the end state of where you're going, don't you? You need to get to a very clear picture of where you're taking that project, what does it look like at the end. If you're managing an organisation, we have a vision statement, very distinctive as part of our organisational management to say, this is where the organisation's going. It's really a high definition picture of that future state, isn't it? So everyone knows where they're heading in some ways.
It's starting with the end in mind.
Yeah, beginning with the end in mind, Stephen Covey.
Absolutely.
Exactly right.
Yep.
I suppose once you've got that vision, it is about getting everyone on board with that vision and building alignment. In some ways, it's probably a little bit like the steering alignment of a car. You sort of, before driving off, you need to know the destination, but when the steering's out on your car, you're sort of going off in different tangents, aren't you? You're veering off the road, you're constantly having to pull the car back into alignment, and people in different sections are going off in different directions as well. The maintenance is hard because the wheels will wear out, all that sort of stuff happens. So for this one, the second behaviour in leading many people or a large project is making sure everyone's on board and building that alignment.
And choosing to be on board.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I want to be on this bus.
Yeah, and I'm excited about the vision, and I've bought into it in some ways as well. Yeah. I suppose the third stage is that we talk about it a lot, where we work with organisations to help plan their future, and we spend a lot of time in workshops coming up with the strategies of how they'll get there. They create this magnificent plan and put it on a shelf. It may not see the light of day again, though. So often the forgotten piece in management and leadership is about executing strategy, isn't it? It's probably not a process we see too often in our universities, where we talk a little bit about crafting that vision and knowing the vision and mission and vision values of the organisation, and we talk a little bit about getting people on board. But there's really not a lot around when it comes to, as a leader, this is what we need to do to execute strategy, is there?
And what's fascinating as well, when you work with groups of leaders, so if you have an executive team, or there's you and 4 or 5 other people that help you run this organization that obviously you're watching today, this is a really valuable report because it can give you a flavor of what your team is good at and where the gaps are. And the interesting thing about this process is that no one person is good at all of it. In fact, when you look at the report, it uses the DISC model as its basis. So if you're north, you're good at aspects of it. If you're south, you're good at other aspects of it.
Definitely.
And so the cool thing is to find people in your organization who fill your gaps.
Who's great at this sort of behavior when it comes to, exploring a vision and where the organization's going, etc. So it does have a couple of attributes. Probably a really good part to look at, Mark, is understanding that there is 3 very distinct steps that a worker leader needs to do when managing an organization: crafting the vision, building alignment, and championing the execution. Under each one of those, though,
we've got the 3 drivers. So under vision, we've got exploration, boldness, and testing the assumption of the idea that you've come up with, and building alignment.
So if we have a look at the next slide and we move into how the work of leaders continuum start moving out, under each one of the 3 steps we have 3 drivers, don't we?
Yep.
And you've got exploration, boldness, and testing assumptions there. So as an example, under the vision, part of developing a vision is being exploratory, isn't it?
Yep.
And at this stage, we want the leader to be an explorer. We want them to be a map maker rather than a map follower, don't we?
Yeah, possibilities.
Yeah, what are the possibilities out there? I think one of the number 1 items in our 363 for leaders, the individual 360 feedback, was people want their leaders to find opportunities more for their organisation and to be explorers in some ways. So this one's a really good one where we can actually pick up whether a leader is good at that. The exploration side of things has a couple of really key behavioural continuums there. We've got remaining open here and prioritising the best practice. But the work of leaders profile will have a continuum, won't they, where it'll have a left and right hand side to the behaviour. The leader will rate themselves on that, won't they?
So what's interesting in this as a Wiley DISC diagnostic, for the very first time now, it's telling you whether this is something that you can do easily or whether this is something that's going to take a great deal of emotional cost.
So it's going to take more energy.
It's a different model, and I must say I find it really effective when I'm working with people.
So in this model, the work of leaders profile will say, well, crafting a vision requires exploration. Step 1 is crafting a vision. The practice underneath that will be exploration, but then we have this behavioural continuum as well. Seeking closure and remaining open are 2 behaviours that a leader might have. A C style might have that wanting to seek closure and wrap things up quickly.
Because they want the detail.
Yeah, they want the detail.
And they also want to assess the risks. They don't want to get it wrong.
But we know in exploring a vision that remaining open for as long as possible, it's sort of like brainstorming, isn't it? Let's have a brainstorming session, and you've got the people in a brainstorming session that really, really like the ideas and the idea generation, putting lots of things on the whiteboard. And at this stage of crafting a vision, we want people to do that, don't we? What are all the possibilities? What are all the ideas? We also know that there's going to be some people in brainstorming sessions who get a little bit anxious in that sort of stuff. They actually want to seek the closure, don't they?
Yeah, and also the D style will want to close it down faster when they think they've seen the thing.
Yeah, they've got the answer.
Yeah, rather than to keep going because the next thing might be the thing.
Yeah.
So typically the right-hand side, tends to be slightly better at this of the DISC model. Not generally, not all the time, but generally.
So in this episode, we're really going to take 3 examples of each of the drivers in the 3 steps of the work of leaders profile, just to give people a little bit of a flavour of how the profile works. So we're going to use craft a vision, and we're going to use one of the drivers in that particular section,
and then
one of the drivers in building alignment, and one in the execution phase. So if we moved into crafting a vision and we did unpack this exploring a vision, being an explorer, we've got 2 behavioural continuum here, which the profile will actually, through their online survey, put a dot on this particular section.
A little dot, absolutely.
Yeah, exactly. So some people may have a dot right down at the seeking closure area. One might have them up at the remaining open, and one might have prioritising big picture somewhere in between prioritising details. So Mark, the behaviours on the right are the best practice for this particular stage of leadership, aren't they? Remaining open is that sort of, I entertain new ideas and possibility, not hurry to finalise plans and so forth. Prioritising the big picture, again, that's the big stuff. I can see the big picture and where what's happening out there. I can see the forest from the trees in some ways.
And where this gets really valuable, if you're doing this with you and the 4 or 5, say 6 people that help you run the organisation, and all of you are sitting at this end, it might mean that there's a bit of a challenge when just seeing, instead of doing, I was at a conference a while ago, instead of saying, well, we're going to go for 10% growth, we're going to go for 10 times growth, the Google idea. We're going to grow it by 10 times. If we end up with twice, well, that's a whole lot better than 10%.
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely. Yeah. So in this process, it is about the leadership group being able to explore possibilities for the organisation. Is it a natural behaviour, or is it a bit of a challenge for them in some ways? Prioritising the big picture is the second continuum there, and we've also got where leaders will be up focusing on broad overall view of an idea or project, or just sort of spending time in the individual elements. I sort of want to figure out how they all work before I do that. There will be a time in this step under testing assumptions for the leader to look at these sort of behaviours. But at the moment, it's sort of about putting all the ideas out there and the possibilities.
Yeah, so I don't know, here's an example. We're going to open up a new office. We're going to move to another state. We're not worrying about the logistics just yet. We're just talking about why would we want to be there? What would be the opportunities? What are the business goals that we can kick if we open up in it? Not what suburb and what colour the building's going to be, but much, why are we? What's the real big benefit? What's the big picture of going?
Yeah, great. So we can see that on the next slide that if you're on the left-hand side, it takes a little bit more energy to move across to the right-hand side. So exploration comes more naturally if the leader's profile shows that they've got some of these behaviours over at the end there. So again, one snapshot, we're in the first step, vision, and one of the key drivers within vision is exploration, and we can have a look at the 2 continuum behaviours that pop out there.
To continue enjoying this presentation, download Brin, the world's first business advisor in your pocket. To find out more, visit brin.ai or search the App Store today.